Greetings, booktubers. Thank you for watching. It's been quite some time since I've made any content, but the purpose of this video is to just generate whatever hype I can around Robert Stickley's first novel, Amended Circuity. Other than Rick Harsh, the publisher of the novel, he did a little thing on YouTube. I don't think there's anything else content-wise on this amazing, masterful novel. So here we go. Amended Circuity is a thrilling and vibrantly intelligent historical yarn that is also absurd, hilarious, deeply perceptive, and thus very thought-provoking. Robert Stickley's first novel has inserted itself directly among the very best pieces of fiction I have ever or will ever read. Before properly going on with the review, I just want to heap a bit more praise here and then describe my personal experience, as well as offer some potential challenges that the book undoubtedly would pose for some readers. So this novel presents a vast array of ideas and potential revelations about the world, existence itself. And I've grappled with these things significantly since finishing this novel a few weeks ago. The cognitive aftermath has been unprecedented. Staggered, I found myself probing the narration, eager to capture the essence of what Stickley was trying to get at in a scene, or I would just revisit hilarious scenarios in my head, thinking of characters, frantically going back and just really suffering from that bad FOMO reading in which I knew I just wanted to bask in it. Because life's too short for so many rereads and there's great fiction out there, but I just wanted to get every little bit I could out of this amazing novel. So I've been eager and not a little intimidated to review this book. But I think, again, just the sheer amount of time I spent towards it qualifies me enough, hopefully, to sway at least a few people towards seizing this amazing literary experience. So, briefly with a few things here. It's endlessly immersive and surprising, broadly erudite and never conventional. I think it could be called satiric. I always struggle with what would be considered satire, but so it was very funny. And as funny as it was at times, there were also so many mental gears kicking in throughout it that I found myself basking exclusively with this book for a month, which is pretty rare for me. And the only disclaimer I intend to provide deals with the absolute relentless vocabularic onslaught. Even a moderately impatient reader, I think, would likely get frustrated, for there's a stunning amount of what I would assume to be unfamiliar words for the reader. And I think the reader at some point early on in this book needs to come to terms with some kind of an approach for themselves. For me, I'm not a mood reader, but I found myself drawn towards it, understanding this amazing giveaway Robert's doing. And I had just gotten it from the press, from Rick, so I thought I'd jump in. Probably the best decision I ever made. So yeah, I understood that this would be for me an all or nothing affair. So I began to really just take my time, and I would simply Google the words I didn't understand. And when I did that, there were also most even, that I noticed were under the heading archaic in terms of the type of language. So that was interesting. And so it numbered in the hundreds, the words. So I would guess roughly 2/3 of those I would look up. The other third I would be content. Perhaps you'll be the same if you read it. You can just glaze over some of them, understanding enough based on the context clues or what have you. So it's hard, it's ambitious, but if you're intrigued right now, keep listening or read my Goodreads, because it's also completely unspoilable. All right, here we go. Charleston, South Carolina, an elusive time period in American history that reads like an alternate reality. We are introduced to Bradley Pinsnett, a genealogically privileged plantation owner who, for us, is the antagonistic conduit of ideas Stickley uses to present some fascinating concepts regarding humanity. In this novel, Bradley is a warmonger, a writer, journalist, an elite denizen of the South who fancies himself a man of faith and virtue, but his fundamental mode of existence is being threatened by a mysterious and hilariously unhostile invisible enemy that wreaks this kind of absurd chaos. Perhaps it's the North, perhaps it's the slaves. Regardless, Bradley is a man of action, and steps will be taken. So, for example, there are landscaping preparations being made for a prestigious croquet tournament, and they go entertainingly awry. At an important socio-political soiree, there's a musical group that facilitates a total psychological and behavioral devolution that leads to fire and mayhem throughout the grounds. So Bradley forms a junto of condign men. These are his fellow uppers in society, to take up arms with the hope of defending their birthright and way of life that they've known. All right, and the other main narrative involves this elusive enemy, and one Maxim Dykesov, an aged Russian espionage weapon, another brilliantly conceived character here. There's a brooding sense of culmination and reckoning as these two plot strands converge amidst masterful prose that includes fascinating digressions, beautifully intricate descriptions of everything from botany to basic instincts, absurdist scenarios with completely outlandish characters and character names, very silly situations that somehow oddly seem serious still. So all of it is just amazing stuff. And I also want to indicate that the final portions of this novel I reread more than once, both in marvel and pontification. And when I closed this book, I was left with a truly profound feeling of awe and appreciation, as well as a sense of hope and relief, to be honest, that literature like this is still possible, and better yet, being published. So, in my time with this book, I decided to make very scattered notes, which I don't do often, but it ended up being 3 pages of loose leaf. I attempted to keep this gorgeous copy in pristine shape. Amazing physical copy, Rick. This book is great physically as well. The rest of this review then will just be kind of a scattering of characterization, structure, themes, and some excerpts for you, okay? So Pinsnett and Dykesov, I think that's how you pronounce it, they had a fairly immense cast of characters, including Bradley's wife, Gabardine, who herself feels captive in her life with Bradley. They own a slave boy, Stafford Notering, who is compassionate, thoughtful, and he tends to Gabardine's doves that she loves. There are chapters that focus on a group known as the Compatriotas and someone known as the Guerrero, who kind of might be behind this strange psychological and absurdist aggression. Other sections focus on this Dykesov character and those that he is tied to, one of which includes a deep-sea diving midget named Igor. And there are certainly a ton more characters that are introduced to varying degrees, all neatly a part of this plot. So structurally, I found this book very effective. There are 8 total sections, 21 chapters that are roughly 25 to 40 pages long, a few space breaks in there, which I appreciate. And going through my notes, there's just so many memorable scenes, struck by how amazingly well conceived it all is. Wonderfully absurd stuff that I don't want to spoil with too much detail. However, I simply can't resist providing some short examples of what you're going to be dealing with. There is an Orgon accumulator experience, an actual cockfight, a stalking tar baby, a preacher who goes by Fanting, who's probably the philosophical framework for the story, and it communicates in very mystifying fashion. We have completely inept and humorous battle tactics from drunken soldiers, impalement by a massive bird, some flashbacks to the relatives of certain characters, which was fun, including a beloved tightrope walking dancing giant. There are references to this mysterious alcohol or liquid concoction that induces this debauchery. A brilliantly executed section. It was amazing. In basically, it's an epic in verse involving the devil himself. There's also a reference to this strange and influential kind of game called Tally-Ho Shadowland, which is played by the kids and has something to do with telepathic emanations. All of it, simply put, magnificent reading. Stickley does not take any sentences off, I can tell you that. The prose, including the dialogue, just brims with intelligence and beauty and sheer confidence. So I'm just going to give you a few examples with a dab of context here. So this next one is after a space break in which the narration shifts to Gabardine, isolated at the lushly beautiful and vast grounds of their plantation known as Marigold Manor. Having blandished its producers from out the revived earth, the plantation dangles out its flowers as both trumperies and treats. The bumblebees are buzzing from lea to verdant lea, this vale twixt marigold and indigo in desperate need of feed, where the nurslings and the lambkins devour all of ever-growing green. Produce is unraveling on the upward stretching glebe. These demesnial tracts in this waning act of spring hold the dance of Carolina's annuals, upstanding alabastrine. But there must come a stop. Gardens will overlap. That which tended and pruned, fixed and pampered, stylized and made, must be continually worked in order to thwart the onslaught of nature's pressing disease. Structure must be made of the elemental, some sense gleaned from the chaos we have been planted in, thrown to. Builded and reshaped, flat spaces must be made to walk upon more easily. A runner must. So it is such a footpath, that crooking line of polished stonework wrapping marigold, which delivers us a special committee of Low Country women making privilege amongst one another behind closed doors. Through Bradley Pinsnett, along with his junto of condign men, Stickley provides a glimpse of the worst parts of our shared human condition. The final sections of this book, read like a sermon or a treatise on the nature of existence itself, and as I said, I went back to read it multiple times, completely spellbound. I realized with horror that there is people somewhat like Bradley in our world. Extremely alarming. We're talking about people who default to an overprotective posture. They're quick to find offense. You know these people. They fail to give the benefit of the doubt. They are convinced they deserve some sort of special kind of treatment. They manufacture competition, and they're willing to defend themselves using force for fear of losing what they know and understand. Could it not be argued that our comprehensive history as a species is nothing short of absolutely deplorable? Is our continued existence not fundamentally unsustainable? In case you aren't aware, the world might be ending, and perhaps our species needs a reset, a rebirth, a cleansing of some kind. Maybe we should just focus on enjoying it while it lasts, and whatever we are faced with afterwards should warrant no consideration. Or every consideration, I suppose, depending on your personal belief system. Personally, when I think deeply about the extended future, I find myself almost thwarted by a kind of disturbing realization that I think Stickley generated, one that defies any hopeful ideas of an eternal. And we all will be forced to reckon someday with our heritage of sin, as he puts it. I love that phrase. Or when the pale blue dot becomes something other than the only home we have ever known, will there be something else entirely? Maybe something consummately miraculous that will save us all. Point of view, especially later in the book, will shift ever so subtly every once in a while. And as the perfectly riveting epilogue gathers its gorgeous momentum, I just wanted to pluck some parts of it, parts that are both hopeful and horrific, for you to maybe sense the brilliance of. Follow me to where our created monsters mark their din upon the stripped-over plain, and help me to ravage that different sentience. We will not cede to lack of want. Use your leisure to fill in all the bored expanses as you pant alongside and against nature's banal order. We may glimpse beauty, photographing it or limning it just this once, and then, by pawing at rarefied beauty, corrupt it to extinction. This is what we have been ordered to do. That is our chore. At the end of this process, we are droving forth, mindlessly moving forth. There is our promised land, our broader implication. All the elemental properties lying dormant in elemental nature, waiting to be discovered, like God's grab bags, are ours to be released, waiting for the command found in a mounting moment to scatter. All men are part of God's method and plan. From atheist to zealot, all men are working towards the same thing. Scientist or sectarian, they are not enemies, but rather partners in gridlocking sanctity with progresses, of eradicating the aboriginal harmony that infected this planet so long. And neither are even entities, rather paths forward into the dim and yellowing climate, lenient with the sin of learning too far above the heads of mankind. They are both needed, wanted, as are all of you. We all play a part in the great dismantling. The end of the novel leaves the reader totally enraptured, naked, stunned after a literary hailstorm of profound concepts and lexical exploration. This novel deserves to be discussed deeply, lauded, and celebrated as a fictional masterpiece. So much of it brought me terrifying concepts and considerations, but I want to conclude by saying the final paragraph is probably transcendently beautiful and maybe even hopeful. And personally, I feel like this book encompasses that perfect example of art that magnifies its rewards based on how much time and effort one is willing to give it. A book hangover? You asked me a few weeks ago. I don't know that I would agree that it even exists. I'm not sure I've ever had one, but I'm not immune to them because I have had false starts with no less than 3 books since that I've been anticipating since finishing this one, and I attribute it to Stickley's brilliance. So alarmingly, Robert S. Stickley may have indeed fundamentally shifted my understanding and appreciation of fine literature. This is a monumental achievement. Be sure to snag your copy from Rick Harsh at Corona Samizdat Press, and while you're at it, pick up a few pocketbooks. He might even throw in one for free for you. So take care, readers. I hope you're all doing great, and hopefully see you soon. Bye for now.